Welcome to Copy Not Found, the podcast about all things gamification in marketing, education, and life. This week we are going to talk about esports. This is one of a couple of podcasts we're going to do on this topic. And today we brought Conor and Seamus down from the game development side.
Hello. Hi.
Seamus and Conor. Basically, from an esports perspective, I would be relatively limited in my knowledge of esports. I haven't done it since my mates and I used to do Left 4 Dead tournaments with like daisy chained computer screens and stuff, and that's showing that I just don't do these things. However, right off the bat, the reason that this even came up in the office is because Conor is quite the Rocket Leaguer.
Big into Rocket League. So Rocket League is kind of like a soccer game, but the players are all cars. That was kind of the draw of it. It's kind of unique. So it's completely physics-based, skill-based. I think it became fairly big because it's a fairly easy idea to grasp. Like, people are familiar with football, so...
And cars.
Yeah.
Okay. And, like, you've played this in tournaments. Now, were they remote tournaments or on-site?
So I've played online tournaments, and I've played one on-site tournament, just a local Irish tournament with probably like the best players that are in Ireland. So,
and how did you do in
that? Pretty well. Came second in that. It would have been the kind of thing that would keep me playing the game. Like, I think it keeps an interest in the game, just playing amongst friends. Like, that was another thing. A lot of people just wanted to meet up with the players that they were playing with constantly. So there was just that area for us to all meet up.
Okay, very good. And then you were doing a qualifier for a tournament yesterday?
Yeah, it's not as big a deal.
Not as big a deal?
No.
Okay. Seamus oversold it. Sorry, Conor.
Did you finish first in the qualifiers?
In my group, yeah.
Okay. So is Rocket League like it's a single person game or like
you can
team?
It's a team game. Like, you can play online 2v2, 3v3, can do like 1v1s online, and it has like couch co-op. You can play with a friend that's sitting beside you.
Okay. And there are other esports games, and we can kind of touch on them later on. But just in terms of esports, obviously they're huge. In a certain demographic, a lot of people have heard esports mentioned and will either be thinking, because I know when I mentioned it to some people who are not in any kind of a computer realm at all, and they go, it's not really a sport. And then you're kind of going, well, I mean, they do have, for the big leagues, like they have drug testing, they have, these guys train. Now, the training is using a computer game, but like they spend about an average of 50 hours a week training, which is about the same as what a professional athlete would spend training.
Well, I always think of it like chess is considered a sport. I wouldn't consider chess a real sport. But in the terms of esports, the chess falls under that domain. It's all thinking.
I think people always expect it to be very like physical.
Yeah.
But like, I heard a good comparison where if you compare it to, say, like NASCAR, if you think NASCAR is a sport, then you can't say that like Rocket League or any game is a sport or isn't a sport.
Yeah. And like these guys are in peak physical condition to drive a car in the case of NASCAR.
Like the car is the main.
But I mean, the reaction speeds of a professional esports player are on a par with an Olympic ping pong player. Like in terms of the reaction speeds, there's 400 hand-eye coordination movements per minute versus the 100 that a normal person has. So, you know.
Yeah,
if you don't make it in Rocket League, go for the Olympics. Cool. Okay, so I mean, they're quite popular. They're growing in popularity. You made a good point before we came on about like if you're a parent picking a sport for your kid to play.
You don't want to choose a physical sport because they'll get injured. You don't want your child to play American football. They hit their head, they're concussed, they start failing in school. You put them in League of Legends and it's stimulating their brain. It's the opposite reaction. If I were a parent, that's definitely what I would choose.
And I suppose, because when the parents were growing up, gaming was such a closeted single person. Like there was no multiplayer networking going on when you played your Mega Drive or your Atari or whatever. It seems isolated, but it's not really. Because someone was saying it's one of the main ways a lot of kids these days learn social interaction and everything else is from playing in leagues and kind of, being competitive, and it addresses an awful lot of the sport things maybe without the running around and smacking into
Right,
people.
the social interaction is a good point because when I was a kid, my dad taught me to play golf because he believed, because it was true for him, if you play golf, you'd advance in your career. The bosses play golf or whatever. But when I got to college, they told me, make sure you put make sure you put games on your CV because that's what people play now. That's how you interact with people in your company.
Just this, I think it's the stereotype is kind of going away, but there's still people that see like the negative stereotype of gaming and how it associated with like the younger crowd, like much younger. But like as I saw earlier in esports, it says it's about 75% of people are between 18 and 34. So it's not just the young crowd anymore. Like
the average age of gaming is at like 28 or something now.
Yeah.
Pretty high.
Yeah, no, it's going up because, basically people who were playing games as kids are still playing games now that they're grown up. They just never stopped, basically. Okay, cool. And then in terms of like popularity, obviously based in Ireland, it's not as visibly popular because there are not that many live events, but I mean, it is quite popular kind of networked and remotely. And that's a nice thing as well. It's an equalizer in that respect. You can be an esports player in Drogheda and you can be doing just as well as someone who's an esports player in London or New York or...
Exactly, yeah. I don't think it's visible anywhere though because it's all played at home,
To a certain extent, but I mean, I have seen the big tournaments that they run. The ones where they're, as I say, where the drug testing. I mean, they don't call around to your house before you kick off a league at home. But the ones where they take the O2 in London and people are raving about it. And to be honest, actually, one of the things I likened it to, in terms of even just watching footage of it, it's basically darts. It's like, coming in and watching two guys who are really not all that, there's something going on, but all you're watching is action on the screen, but it's a raving crowd and everybody is going nuts. And obviously the sponsorships that come with it then, I mean, they're it's apparently pound or dollar, whatever it is per invested return, esports is the most efficient sponsorship still. It beats soccer, rugby, American football, all of them hands down because it hasn't fully been adopted yet, so you get a bit of value for it. So that's why it's growing as well. It's because the marketing companies are realizing, I stick my product in here, I'll do pretty well. I mean, ones that have adopted it very early on, the likes of Monster and...
Right, Conor was
they'd be the ones that come in early are the ones that are supporting the brand, like making it get to the level that it's at now. They're the ones that the players would be trusting the most, would be loyal to these brands, the ones that got in early. The ones that jump in now have to be careful not to slap on a logo instead of...
if you're a Call of Duty player, Mountain Dew and Doritos is a meme at this stage, right? Like they just got in there so fast and now everyone's like Mountain Dew, Doritos.
They're actually in it as Easter eggs in some episodes. They're running through the forest and they're on the ground.
Right, like they just got in there in time that it blew up.
Yeah. No, and I mean, okay, for existing games, but as more games come on, and that's the other thing, I suppose, is the longevity of the games. So, I mean, I remember Counter-Strike when it came out, and that's quite a while ago now, and yet it's still...
I started playing Counter-Strike when it was Counter-Strike Source, and then people kind of upgraded to Counter-Strike Go, even though Go was out at the same time as Source. So, like, they are releasing new games, but they're still just Counter-Strike. People play the same, 2 maps, over and over again. Yeah. There's not really much change. Like, it's one of those games that's been consistent. People play it for the reaction speed and, like, it's less...
And every once in a while they do pull out an update, like a balance change, just to keep it competitive, I guess.
Yeah, they nerf something or they... okay. And... Like, what's the average life? Like, I mean, how long has Counter-Strike been going?
Couldn't even do an estimate.
1995, probably.
Yeah, so in terms of esports, obviously we covered longevity and the equalization of being in different locations, but it's still able to play. I mean, the reason esports can generate revenue is the viewership. Yeah, it's the streaming. I mean...
Totally true.
Yeah.
And your streamers at the moment, like... in League of Legends, they came out with a patch 8.11, which totally changed the meta. So streamers had to stop streaming in order to stay professional because they had to learn the game again, basically.
Okay.
So the streaming like took a huge hit as huge players stopped streaming.
Okay. What would be the point of doing that?
Well, it's streaming and playing competitively are two different skill sets. You're not going to play your best when you're streaming to an audience.
Okay.
So you have to actually learn the game like seriously. No talking, no listening to donations and this sort of stuff. Just focused on the game, testing things.
At the same time, I think the draw to streaming is that a lot of players want to see how to play better.
Yeah.
Even if they're not playing at their best, they want to see how a pro player plays.
Yeah. Because
So
they
all
can't.
these, like the pros that come from esports, they usually create a channel on Twitch and then stream their gameplay. That's just brand recognition, or like showing the brand off.
Yeah.
So it's really good for the game developers to have a game that's being shown by streamers consistently.
Yeah, I was going to say because I mean it's like when we had Charlie on there a couple of weeks ago, and like obviously his popularity and his base is built off of people streaming his game,
Yeah.
and I mean that was his single source of followers, and that's what made his current game a success, was having had so many other things streamed in the past. And then I mean for the tournaments themselves, I think you were saying that the revenue from holding a tournament, 10% of it is audience and attendance at an actual event. The rest is sponsorship.
And like exclusive merchandise that you could only get at that event. And just monetization around the event rather than just ticket sales.
Yeah. And even in the games themselves. So esports, there's two elements to esports. There's the company who made the game. And I mean, their income from a particular event isn't so much the event, because there's companies running the esports, but they pay a licensing fee to, say, Counter-Strike or Rocket League. They give them a licensing fee, and then after that, the esports guys are making the money. They're running the event, but Counter-Strike or whoever or Rocket League will then sell cosmetic items. So they'll sell you a...
Right, most games they go cosmetic because if you're paying for a more powerful gun, it takes the skill out of the game and people aren't interested in playing in the first place.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just paying for cosmetics, you can pay or you can not pay, but you're still getting the same experience as any professional streamer gets.
Yeah, yeah.
So the great thing about Rocket League is if you pay for a cosmetic item, that a portion of that money goes towards the prize pools of the tournaments.
Okay, very good. So you're supporting it in some ways as well.
Like you're supporting the players, basically.
Yeah, so when you win 50 quid in Rocket League and then spend it on a pink car, some of that money goes back to the next... Yeah, okay, very good.
But the thing about Rocket League is that the amount you have to pay for is actually very small. There's maybe like 20 DLC cars, something like that.
Yeah, like you can pay directly for cars that they've made, or you can pay for a key to open a crate. It has like the whole crate cosmetic system.
Okay, all right.
When you open a crate, you have a random chance to get like a very rare item or just...
But like skins and colors, they have loads already included that like a lot of games they just give you a plain blank player, like a blank slate, and you wouldn't be able to do anything unless you paid.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of customization in the game. But yeah, I think they just introduced the crates as a way to have longevity in the game as well, because the game is already fairly set in stone, like what the rules are, and there's not much else they can do to monetize on the game, I'd say. You can't just have like a big DLC like you'd see in COD with like new maps and new weapons and all this.
Yeah, so the cosmetic items are a nice way of them, like, obviously feeding the tournament prize money, but as well keeping people interested and keeping people going. And then obviously, you were saying like you could have to end up patching a game for 10 years.
Right, because you'd want to keep it going as long as possible. The longer it goes, the more money you're making. The good example is like StarCraft. That went on for 10 years and got like 7 patches. But of course, Blizzard's not seeing any money from that. They're not selling anything in game. They sold the original game for, I think you can buy it for a tenner now, the HD version.
Yeah. So it more makes sense when if they had released 7 patches, but you could buy something in game.
You can buy 1,000 different skins for your guys. Then they're not selling €10 per customer. They're selling maybe on average like €50 per customer. And then there's obviously whales who buy everything.
So other esports kind of ones out there, there's, as we mentioned, Counter-Strike, Rocket League, Hearthstone.
Yeah, Hearthstone went, in my opinion, the direction of pay to win. You can unlock everything in the game by grinding it out, but the grind is tedious. It's so long, and
It's just a very expensive game to get into.
Okay.
you drop about €200 in order to have a competitive deck these days and have some variety.
Okay, all right. It takes, yes, a lot of the skill out of it. It's pay to win.
But
The,
even
the,
that,
the
like,
skill is there at the higher level, right? Like if you have the full completed competitive deck and the other guy does too, then you're playing a really serious, intense game and it's great. But it takes so long to get to that point that I dropped out. I know a lot of my friends dropped out. Just took too much.
Like obviously, is Call of Duty, is Gears of War still going as a?
Yeah, it's not an e-sport. I wouldn't even call Call of Duty an e-sport.
No.
No, it's more like
well, it has the same problem. I think the game is just, it's very expensive. It can't just be picked up by everyone. Like, it's always €60 plus whatever for like a season pass, like €40. You're probably paying €100 for the game. That's only going to last a year. You know, like the next game comes out next year.
and right if you like Black Ops and then they come out with Modern Warfare 3 the next year, Modern Warfare 3 sucks basically, and everyone who played Black Ops now has to either switch or stay on Black Ops, and that halves their streams, like, right? So half the players want this, half the players want that. So not everyone is interested in upgrading. So they keep dividing their audience.
Okay.
Developers they're realizing that free to play is one of the main ways to go, or just make the game fairly cheap so anyone can jump in. Like, you see, Counter-Strike is €14, I think.
Yeah.
Rocket League's fairly cheap, €20. Then there's Dota, League of Legends,
They're both free.
They're both free.
Yeah,
anyone can jump in.
Okay. So we've covered the longevity, the sponsorship, the streaming. I'll cover sponsorship more with one of the companies that actually run these events. I think they'd be the ones to talk to. Obviously, having paid to win kind of spoils it for a lot of people. So the revenue streams are the event itself, sponsorship, streaming revenue. So the guys themselves, the professionals, they can stream.
Yeah.
They'll get donations on Twitch. They'll make a few quid.
I imagine most of the revenue has to come from in-game items, because you can sell them to everyone, whether whether they watch streams or they don't, right? If they're playing the game, they want to buy it.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of anyone watching who, say, a kid says they want to play games, like, are there any pitfalls they should be aware of, or should they just jump right in?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's always an issue with kids that they might just spend €200 of their parents' credit card without even considering the actual cost of what they're paying for.
I think FIFA went through a spin that recently, didn't they? Because I met somebody and his kid had dropped €250 over a weekend because they ticked the box automatically pay or whatever it was, just store credit card details.
I mean, Apple now have a policy where the first time you do that, they'll refund it all, but they won't do it. They won't refund you the second time if a kid spends so much money. But now, they're getting to the stage after Star Wars Battlefront 2. Some politicians are taking notice and they're saying this is advertising. One guy said a Star Wars casino for your kids. So they might bring in legislation. It's taking a long time, as governments do. But.
Yeah, it'll depend on where you're located and everything as well. So basically, pitfalls would be like, make sure you're not leaving your credit card details on whatever device it is they're playing it on.
I mean, you don't want them to never spend a dime either. Some kids, if they do their homework and you say, okay, you can buy a Hearthstone pack, the same way you'd buy a Pokemon pack back in the day. That's totally feasible. But
don't store the details. Go in and physically download and pay and enter your PIN and then go, right, I've done it once, it's not stored, it can't happen again unless I'm in present. Yeah. In terms of the online interaction then, like, are there particular audiences, has like that changed any? I do remember the old days, and I'm not sure if it has improved all that much, but
it's definitely easier to mute people.
Okay.
You can turn off audience interaction immediately in most games. Hearthstone, you have 6 emotes. You can say hello, you can say well played, you can say sorry.
So it's like the 6 reactions to a Facebook post.
The community is a pretty big deal when it comes to keeping the game relevant, because they'll be the ones that are creating the videos and, guides, tips, whatever it is. So yeah, in Rocket League they do have that as well, quick chat, but then they also have full on, like you can type anything to someone, which does lead to a lot of negative people, I'd say. Toxic
trolling and
people.
stuff, toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But for the most part, you will get a lot of decent people that just want to improve at the game, and it's fairly tricky from the developer's perspective, because they could just say, oh, this word can't be typed, you'll get banned if you write this word. But some words are accepted in like Australia, it's like common words, like they just call their friends whatever they want. So they have to be very careful with who they're banning.
And as well, like you'll always find ways around that. Like
there's always a way around.
The old conditions of service places in AOL, like the screen names that would get banned. And you'd be looking at, I don't get it, and you're like, turn it the other way around. Like, whoa, okay, people will find ways of avoiding.
I think on
censorship.
Xbox there was a guy called Michael. His real name was something like Michael Gay or something like that, and they banned him. It's one of those things that you can't legislate for everything. So I mean, I suppose it goes back to everything with kids and video games. Parents kind of have to be involved. You can't just leave them unattended and hope for the best. I'll be back later to collect you, or like the guy in France who went off playing Pokemon and his kid ends up being rescued on the balcony. Okay, all right. So in terms of esports, a lot of opportunity out there in terms of sponsorship. In terms of as an industry, definitely growing. A great revenue source if you can get your game to be kind of adopted by a community. So thinking about making it adoptable by a community. So there is a Rainbow Six Siege. It came out and it wasn't adopted at all, but they kept patching it. They kept updating it. They lowered the price, and now it's probably in the top 10 most played esports. Okay,
so they stuck with it and actually until they got the mechanic right.
And the opposite happened with For Honor, where it's like this community is constantly shrinking. I imagine they're probably trying to do the same thing.
So.
Yeah, I think they have had a bit of one.
They failed in a lot of ways. They had the wrong kind of server set up, so it was impossible to play. Like, it was unplayable. But they're getting it to a state where people are able to play with each other finally, and the game is fairly well balanced. So it's a very good game.
Like the takeaway point is keep updating it if you fail, because
like they stuck with it even though the player base just disappeared.
Players want to see it's being updated as well. If I pick up like Dota 2 and a patch never comes out and this thing is broken and unbalanced, then why would I even pick up that game? It's not a patch.
Yeah, you want to see current usage and stuff, and it's one of those things as well. It's a snowball effect. Once it starts getting adopted and getting twitched, more people come in. Then the player base gets bigger. The bigger the player base, the more fun it is, and it goes from there. So if you're building a game, definitely something to bear in mind. If it's a team playing game or like a multiplayer game, to think of the community, think about the long-term ramifications, think about the revenue stream. So you don't pull a StarCraft where your only revenue source was the original download and then everything else is free.
Yeah.
Maybe bring in some cosmetic stuff, but don't bring in pay to win because you'll annoy an awful lot of players. Great. Okay, well, this has been Coffee Not Found. All our social media channels are at the end now, so I don't have to say anything at all. It's great. Talk to you next week.